The hat was too much. Hi, and welcome to Witchy Sips, another witchy podcast, but with coffee or tea. I want to introduce myself really briefly. My name is Dario Garcia. I live in El Paso, Texas. I am a sign language interpreter, photographer, visual artist, tarot reader, queer, gay, Hispanic, brujo, witch. I'm sober also, so all the intersectionality is there. I am Hispanic, like I said, and so I grew up going to Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico. My mom would take me to spend like a week, 2 weeks during vacations to spend time with my family that lived in Mexico, and so I grew up hearing about brujeria and limpias and lechuzas, which, if you're not familiar, brujeria is basically just Mexican folk magic. Limpias are cleanses, and lechuzas are basically barn owls, but barn owls like the type that the ones that have like the smushed face, that don't have little ear feathers, like kind of like Harry Potter's snow owl, but not fully white. I think they're super pretty, but yes, lechuzas. And so lechuzas are thought to be witches that turn into those owls to like harass people. But yeah, so I grew up listening to my grandma and my tias, my aunts, talk about brujeria and limpias and lechuzas and also the Llorona in a not scary way, although they did use La Llorona to scare children into doing things, but also La Llorona as like a story that you tell that's part of the culture. And so yeah, so I grew up listening to all that. And so aside from those experiences, I didn't have any ties to like brujeria or witchcraft or anything occult that pertained to my culture, my Hispanic Mexican culture, or any other type of witchcraft from different parts of the world. None of that. The reason for that is because I grew up in a very religious household with a very religious mother, a very religious stepfather, and a very religious upbringing. And so my only exposure to witchcraft or brujeria or that kind of thing was with my family in Mexico when my mom would leave me alone with them, or when I would go visit my cousin and I would stay over and we would watch like Hocus Pocus or Sabrina the Teenage Witch or Power Rangers, the witch with the little twisty hairdo. So aside from that, I didn't have any other exposure to it other than Hocus Pocus or Sabrina the Teenage Witch as a kid, or the weird alien witch from the Power Rangers, Rita, I believe was her name. Anyway, so now in my 30s, actually starting in my mid-20s, I started to explore these parts that I didn't get to as a kid because I had repressed so much, I think, like my gayness, my interest in witchcraft, my interest in exploring spirituality outside of the church. So I started looking into it. And so the reason for this podcast is basically to come out of the witchy closet, which is not to say I haven't practiced openly. Within the past few years I have, but again, more so to just explore my practice with friends, with guests, with listeners, that kind of thing. So about 2015, a year into my sobriety, I started doing yoga and I started a meditation practice just because that was more a self-reflective practice instead of not so much an outwardly expressed practice, more for myself. Because if anybody out there is sober, you would know that sobriety is a hard thing to deal with, and so I figured, why not? So I started experimenting with yoga, meditation, chakras, and energy work. I went to Reiki sessions a couple of times, several times, but it wasn't until like 2016 where I started looking more into sigil magic and sigil making and still meditating. In 2018 though is when I got into candle magic and manifestation and tarot, actually, because I was like, you know what, I want to learn tarot. And so I started reading up on the history, and I started reading up on the how-tos, and I started just picking it up as I went along. And so now my practice mainly comprises tarot, divination through tarot, candle magic, manifestation, sigil making, sigil magic, and still meditation without the yoga. I kind of let yoga go, which makes me sad because I used to be really, really bendy, and that was really, really cool, but now I'm not. But these things, right? And so and I am by no means an expert on these subjects, but what better way to continue learning and improving your practice than to speak about it openly with listeners, with guests, with friends. And so that's going to be very exciting. So that's what the podcast is going to be. It's going to be informative, it's going to be educational, it's going to be interesting topics of conversation relating to witchcraft and brujeria and other practices around the world, other occult practices around the world. But also, we're not taking ourselves too seriously because, like I said, I'm not an expert. My friends are probably not experts as well, and if they are, we all continue learning either way. So that's going to be exciting as well. What the podcast is going to be about is basically why we're here, why we practice what we practice, or what practices are involved, what each person's practice is, and why they chose that, and what they do with it. I think especially because witchcraft is making a resurgence, or not so much resurgence, but I think it's becoming more visible through social media, on TV. You hear about it often. There are so many witchy podcasts. So like I said, Witchy Sips, another witchy podcast, but with coffee. So yeah, and I don't think it's so much a resurgence, but it's more everybody's getting in tune with their energy work within themselves, which I think is kind of cool because it's more visible now, and it's starting to be more accepted, I feel, which maybe I just feel that way because that's what I look at, and that's what I look for, and that's most of my feeds on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or that kind of thing. Also, we're gonna have guests. So this is our first episode. In 2 weeks, we're gonna have my best friend Audrey, who is also my coworker. She's also a sign language interpreter, but she's also witchy, and she's also a tarot reader, but she's also an artist. So it's gonna be really exciting to have her here, and she's gonna be a recurring guest. So that's gonna be cool because she's just a lot of fun. So that's gonna be great. And then I have another person who was willing to be on the podcast to talk about very interesting topics like close practices and how we might take concepts of those practices and implement them into our practice without infringing on that practice, that culture itself. So that'll be an interesting one to listen in on. So yeah, so it's gonna be, this is our first episode, which is today. I wanted to be on the first day of fall, because yay fall, which is September 22nd, 2021, which is literally tomorrow. I'm literally recording the day before the first day of fall. I actually wanted to have like a better set for the first episode, but right now I just have this chair and this stool where I can put my candle and my coffee. And if you're listening on Spotify or on iTunes, it makes really no difference. So, but so this is our first episode for the first day of fall, and then we're going to have episodes every 2 weeks. And so the next episode is 2 weeks away, and that's when Audrey's going to be here, and we're going to introduce Audrey and have a little chat with her and her practice and what she does. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to have our Halloween episode, which is going to be on Halloween, which is going to be on Sunday. So that's going to be a little bit of an off-schedule one. And then after that, we're going to have my friend who brought up the subject about closed practices and such. So it's going to be really exciting. I'm excited for everybody to listen in, and if you want to join us with a cup of coffee, with a cup of tea, with your favorite beverage, if you drink alcohol, with your favorite alcoholic beverage, or whatever it may be, and just listen in and hear our conversations about our witchy things. And so I guess that brings us to the end of the first episode. So I found, because it's our first episode, and because I feel like grounding is a very important part of meditation and just anybody's practice in general, even if you're not very witchy inclined. So I found a grounding ritual that can help us. It's from a website called tipofthemoon.store. So it says crystals that you can use for this are jasper, obsidian, jet, hematite. They're all good grounding stones. And if you don't have certain things from like specific spells or specific rituals, do your own practice. That's what we're here for. That's why we're here, because we're continuing to learn what works for us. That might not be what works for everybody else, or for the person next to you, or whatever the case may be. So this grounding ritual asks for jasper, obsidian, jet, hematite. But if you have like a quartz, that's always a good neutral stone to have. It says if you have houseplants, you can have houseplants around you just to bring some type of nature into the space. If you want to burn something, sage and sandalwood are always good to burn. We might talk about specific uses of herbs and or things to burn. Just from an environmental standpoint, we don't want to damage the world as much as we have been, so we want to make sure that we maintain good ethical practices when burning things, and making sure that they are conscientiously sourced. Anyway, you're going to get your jasper, your obsidian, your jet, your hematite, your quartz. If you want to burn something, you can burn sage or sandalwood, or anything else that you might have, maybe an incense of some kind that makes you feel relaxed. If you have houseplants that you want to bring into your space, bring them into your space, and so you can have some kind of nature around just to make you feel more calm. If nature is not your thing, then by all means do not bring in your houseplants. And so if you want to light something, your incense, your sage, your candle, when you light whatever it is that you're going to light, you can ask it to aid you in grounding and centering your spirit. Speak this aloud to your candle or whatever it is you're lighting, and even if it feels awkward, you can whisper it to yourself but always speak your magic. That's what it says. I personally like to think about what my intentions are for a specific ritual, so you can also just think it. Like I said, the website says to speak it, but it's what works for you. And so you just want to sit with your candle or whatever it is you lit, with your stones, and meditate. Feel what parts of your body are touching the ground. If you're sitting on a chair and it's only your feet that are touching the ground, or if you're sitting on the ground yourself, or if you're laying on the ground, feel what part of your body is touching the ground, and kind of notice your breath flow in and out, and just kind of develop a slower breathing pattern. While you're doing that, you want to visualize roots growing out of your body and extending into the earth, and visualize those roots growing deeper into the ground, and raise that awareness and that connection with the earth and the universe, and feel that foundation. with that, you can feel your anxieties going away. You can feel your fears just kind of draining away. And grounding is important because you let that energy of the earth kind of just filter away any negative energy. And so you can stay in this meditative state for as long as you need, as long as you wish, as long as you are able physically even. And being grounded is not just about feeling just chill, right? The website says that it's also helps us to be aware of our connection to all the things around us. And as people that deal with energy work and energy manipulation for desired outcomes, we kind of are always connected to something, be it the ground, be it your space that you live in, or your space that you go into to practice your rituals or your meditation or your witchcraft or your brujeria, whatever it may be. So it's always nice to be connected and feel centered, right? Oh, so then it says after you're done meditating and you're finished visualizing, you can leave your candle, your sage, your incense, whatever it is that you're burning. You can let it burn for another hour or so, half hour to hour or so, and just kind of imagine the space filling with your intention. And yeah, it says you can perform this ritual as often as needed, but it's always good to have a grounding ritual or a grounding practice just to get that connected feeling to whatever space you're in or to whatever space you feel comfortable in. So yeah, so I think that's gonna be it for today, and I'm excited for this to be the start of another witchy podcast, but with coffee, witchy sips. So we will see you guys in 2 weeks with my best friend Audrey, and we'll have questions to ask her, and we'll talk about her practice and what she does and her art. Yeah, all right, sounds good. Thanks everybody for watching and for listening. I will see you all in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.